G'day listeners and welcome to another week of the Keeper League podcast. We're the AFL Fantasy podcast that doesn't obsess over the superstars. We talk about the lesser knowns and the blokes that are more likely to add value to your Keeper League. I'm joined by Kays as per usual. How you going, mate?
Very well, Hef. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. Had a nice weekend. Played golf with you on Friday night, and then had a big buck show on Saturday, which was quite messy. So
good,
yeah,
as
good
it
fun.
should be.
How was your weekend, mate?
Not that loose. I had to work on Saturday, unfortunately, and then just bits and pieces on Sunday. So pretty low key for me. I'm feeling fresh, ready for Australia Day weekend, maybe a few beers.
Yeah, all right. So let's get stuck into it. What are we doing this week, guys?
We are going to look at Collingwood, Essendon and Fremantle. Check out all their best 22s and kind of pick out 6 of the guys that might be under the radar of a few other pods, etc. So we'll, as you said before, we talk about the guys who don't get all the credit, don't get all the kudos, the ones who help you win a league, though, especially when we're talking keeper and dynasty. So very excited tonight because I get to talk about my Bombers, and I thought it might be worth bringing in now these delicious Colonial Bomber Kolsch ales. They are fantastic.
Yeah, I don't mind them actually. Out of all the, I guess the Footy Club branded beers, I reckon they're my favourite ones so far. And it takes a lot to me to overlook a Port Adelaide Pirate.
There's a lot of bias to get through. A lot of bias.
All right. Before we get stuck into the team analysis tonight, we're going to have our league spotlight straight up. So this week we're joined by Lachie from WA, and he's going to tell us about his keeper league. All right, kicking off proceedings tonight, we're going to start with the Collingwood Magpies. So, explain it again. We've picked 6 players, so 3 each, that we're going to talk about that might be available in your keeper leagues this year and might provide some value. Kays, I reckon I get you to kick it off. Who's your first player?
Before that, I would start with my best 22 for Collingwood, Hef.
Of course, and I don't have it in the show doc here. I'm very sorry.
I'm above you this week. I'm actually on the ball for once. So, in the back pocket, we'll start off with Jeremy Howe, Jordan Roughhead, and John Noble. Halfback line of Jack Crisp, Darcy Moore and Braden Maynard. Centre line, Tom Phillips, Scott Pendlebury, still side bottom. Jordan De Goey, Brodie Myercheck, Jamie Elliott. Then Jaden Stevenson, Mason Cox and Callum Brown. In the ruck, Brodie Grundy, Adam Treloar and Taylor Adams. And on the bench, Dane Beams, Chris Mayne, Will Hoskin-Elliott and Josh Thomas.
Now, I guess the glaring omissions for me are you've missed Langdon out, who you're going to talk about in a second. What's your reasoning there?
I actually think that the Collingwood backline was very settled at the end of last year, and Langdon obviously missed a fair bit of footy. If he is 100% fit, he probably slots in there somewhere. I'm not too sure where. Yeah. But I'll talk about him in 1 second. But and then it's probably that Dane Beams. We're just not sure where he's going to be. I put him on there because obviously if he is fit, he's in their best 22, no doubt. But it's probably between Braden Sire and Rupert Wills for that kind of last bench spot for me.
Okay, so you think if Dane Beams isn't in, one of those two guys comes in?
That's my gut feel. Yeah.
All right, cool. So, all right, let's kick it off. Let's talk about some players.
All right, so Tom Langdon is the first guy I'll talk about. He's obviously a very, very good defender and was crippled by injury last year. So looking back from 2015 to 2018, he was a really solid defender, averaging those 70s. And his last full season was really 2018, where he averaged 74 with 2 tons. Only played the 9 games last year for a 65 average, and he had some chronic cartilage injury in his knee there. So he's undergone surgery and has been conservatively managed, and it seems unlikely, according to Collingwood, that he's going to play very early this season. So it is damn, because he's just one of those guys, as we love as those defenders, a guy you can lock in for your low to mid 70s and not worry about as a D4, D5. Unfortunately, he's not going to be there at the start of the year. The good thing is he's only 25, so for me he's a guy that you just could take late, because he's not going to be on too many radars unless you're a serious fantasy buff and you know what he can do. But if you can take him late and just kind of hold him, stash him away for the first half of the year, hope he gets back fully fit and going, and come finals time he could be a great guy to just slot into that last spot in your defence and get those 70s, and as we know, he can score a ton too.
I think the hard part is probably for people deciding whether to keep him or not, whether it is worth keeping. So think about the bloke who's got him in our side. I think it's Pugs is the guy who's got him.
I've actually got him now.
Oh, you do? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
so
I did a late season trade with Pugs, and I thought that potentially Langdon could sneak him away into my best.
So you're the
20,
perfect man to answer this question.
So
do you keep him?
I can't keep him.
Yeah, right. So he's in the waivers.
He's going to be in the waivers.
In the draft.
Yeah. So where would you take him?
Sweet. Look, knowing the first round. Look, for me, I've got nothing to lose. I'm not probably going to have a crack at finals again this year unless many things go my way. Yep. So I would be taking him, mid early, just to kind of jump in, because I reckon the following year he could actually be quite a good defender going forward.
It's tough because there's lots of my boys who I want to keep.
Yeah.
As you know, I'm very biased to who I love, and like I'd love to slot someone like London in there just for some back cover. Really, like I've got a couple okay backs, but no one really good. If I had that kind of spare 16th spot that I was happy to trade, it's for me like Langdon. My last pick's kind of like Cutler or Langdon or potentially Joe Danaher. So they're the three guys I'm tossing up between for my 16th
Cutler
pick.
there, surely.
Well, it's got to be Cutler because Danaher's just as injured as Langdon. So
and doesn't want to play.
Exactly, which is horrible. But he's a tough one. I think I'm going to put him back in, and I'm going to be monitoring him very closely and see where he's going to go in that draft. And as you said, like if you're keen on him to go early, you might have to go earlier than you.
Yeah,
let the games begin.
Let's move on to one of my players. So this is actually one of my boys because now I own this guy.
He's actually your boy.
Yeah, instead of just using the phrase "my boy" liberally every week. But anyway,
congratulations.
Let's talk about Braden Maynard. So he really started to shine last season. He averaged 77.5 in 2019. So pretty reasonable going there. Let's have a look at his last five. Thanks to the late season averages and differentials at keepleaguepod.com.au. He had 87.2 average from his last 5 games. So what I really like about Braden Maynard is just how consistent this guy is. And we say that about a lot of players. Like, this guy's consistent because he can get you a 70 row. We love 70s at the Keeper League. We think that's like a great defender score.
Yep.
If you can get a defender that gets you 70 every week.
Yep.
That's a great. This guy literally gets 70 every week.
That's good.
He went 12 games in a row where he had 17 or above. 70 or above. Yep. But like a lot of these scores were ranging between 71 and 75. He'd just get the same pretty much score every week.
Yep.
So really consistent with those 70s. He had 3 tons last year though. So it's the first kind of year he kind of went big in a few games. So if you remember back to round 22 versus the Crows, he was absolutely on fire. He was kicking snags, running through the middle, doing everything. And he scored 130 AFL fantasy points. For me, he's a really great user of the ball. So it's not just one of these fantasy types that just get the kicks and get their stats up, but are always on the verge of probably losing their spot on the side. He's actually a pretty good user of the ball. And Collingwood kind of seem to want the ball in his hands. So for me, he's a huge breakout chance. I reckon he can kind of maintain what he did at the end of last season. I think 80 plus should be minimum for him this year. If it's not, I'm going to be disappointed. What do you think, Hayes?
Yes, as a guy who used to own Braden Maynard, I kind of followed my ex player quite closely, and I've been really impressed. When I got rid of him a couple of years ago, he was not doing what he was doing last year, obviously. As you said, he's a great user of the ball. Like, it was definitely towards the back half of the season last year for Collingwood, they wanted the ball in his hands. Like, he was their user out the back lines, and that's important. It's similar to someone we're going to talk about from the Bombers. It's good to see when you can actually see that a team wants to get it to someone, because it means you know that they're going to rack up more stats because they're actually going to be fed the ball a lot more. So I've been very impressed by how he's improved, and look, he's definitely a keeper. And if you were starting up a league, I think you'd be looking at him as maybe a D2, D3.
Yeah,
I
that's
reckon.
what I was thinking. Yeah,
so.
It's getting up to that range. So it is a bold projection, I guess, because you probably could pick someone more established in that point. But you got to think as well that a lot of these guys are going to be likely to go early. These defenders, when you think of the scarcity,
defenders are a premium for sure.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next play case. Now, when we did the show doc case, I was filthy. You got to talk about this guy because he is one of this podcast's most favourite sons.
Yes,
I think
he is, and the early bird gets the worm. And I got Callum Brown, so he's really one of the pod's favourite. We banged on about him heaps last year.
Right, so Callum Brown, tell us about him.
Yeah, so 20 games last year in 2019, and only was an average of 65. So probably a tad underwhelming, especially when you watch him, because he always seems to be in the play. He always seems to be involved, and I think that's why we love him. He's always on the screen. He's always doing something, even though his stats might not always be as high as you think they should be. What's great, he gets in dangerous positions, and I think he's just biding his time beautifully before a genuine crack in the Pies midfield. So really last year where Collingwood were at, his role was limited to be that 60-70 averaging player, the high half forward, the pressure forward, that kind of thing. But when he was actually given the opportunity to get a bit of time in the midfield and run through the middle of the ground, he really, really showed us what he can do. So his PB last year was 109 versus Carlton, where he had 21 touches, 8 tackles and 2 goals. Like, that is basically the perfect Callum Brown game of what he can do now, but it's really what he can do in the future that kind of excites us, I think, Hef. And if you look at his VFL game, then he played one VFL game last year, he got dropped back, 24 touches, 7 tackles and a goal for 101 points. So for me, he's a forward option this year with great upside heading into even this year, but definitely 21, 22, that kind of thing. I think he's going to be a guy that just goes from, that 65 to 90, 95 in a year or two easy.
Yeah, for me, he's the type of player that needs to kind of move into the midfield to score well, just like most forwards and things like that. Because as well, Collingwood have a lot of those mid-forward types as well that kind of can pinch hit and do both. But as well, I guess with Callum Brown, the thing what we're going to have to think about is where he fits into that midfield, because there's so many Collingwood midfielders. There's probably about 7 actually mainstay midfielders, and that's not to mention blokes who move through there like DeGoey or like Stevenson who could go through there and something like that. So that's where I kind of draw my concerns from this season. I think going forward, he's going to be an absolute star. So it's probably a good time to jump on if you've got him and get into him early. But even thinking about this season, like say if Pendlebury, they decide to play him across half-back because he doesn't have the tank anymore to go in the midfield. Dane Beams doesn't come back from his issues. Taylor Adams is always injured. So it could actually be a year for him. So it could be worth the punt if you jump on him this season.
And it's something that he has that not a lot of the other Collingwood mids have is speed. Like if you're looking, Pendlebury slow, Sidebottom slow, Adams isn't, electric by any stretch of the imagination. Then you've got guys like Beams, Main, and then the second guys like Sire and Willis. Wills aren't. Ever since you did that tweet, I can't get it out of my head. Sire and Wills aren't, electrically paced. So having someone like Brown run through the midfield is something that Collingwood will need at times throughout the year, and I think he'll get that opportunity more in 2020 than he did last year.
Yeah, I reckon it's time to pull the trigger with him. Draft him this year if you can, because you probably won't get another chance to.
Agreed.
All right, on to John Noble from Collingwood. So defender this season, only played 5 games last year, and in those 5 games though, in 3 of them he went above 70 points. So his average including finals was 67, so it was pretty consistent through the finals, because for the regular season average it was 68, so he dropped a point there. Nothing major to worry about. But what I liked about him, especially in the final against Geelong, he just seemed to really command the footy. He looked really comfortable in that game. Looked like he was telling his teammates where to kick it, and he would just be there, and they had actually like confidence in him to actually use the ball as well. So that game was a real standout for me. My main concern is, being a mid-season player coming in, then the raft of injuries. We had Jeremy Howard injured. We had Langdon out injured last season. If those guys are all fit and firing at some stage, is he still best 22? That's the big concern for me. And if you've got a shit team like mine, you can't really have blokes who aren't playing, because you've got enough of those type players that aren't playing. So for me, he's probably not someone I'm going to draft with too much confidence unless it's super late, because I just can't guarantee that best 22. What do you think, Hayes?
Well, I've got him in my back pocket of my best 22, and look, you could make a case for, obviously Tom Langdon being in there when he's fit. Even Isaac Quainer off the halfback flank could be quite handy for them. So it's going to be interesting to watch over the March series, see where he fits in. I think for a guy like him in his first season to be playing finals footy is a massive tick. And yes, he does have a few tricks in terms of fantasy, which I do like too. As he said, he commands the ball really well. He didn't look out of place. It was a great thing about a few of these mid-season recruits, that they didn't look out of place as soon as they got in the AFL system. And he looked pretty at home in that Collingwood backline. And, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what all these guys do who were mid-season draftees last year and how they progress in 2020, because we haven't had them for ages and ages, really, before our time. So if he can maintain his spot in that back pocket, I think he can be a very, very handy contributor for your fantasy side. Yeah, for sure. All right, let's move on to your next player, Kaz. Who you got? Yes, my final player for the Pies is Brody Myercheck. Now, I think he's going to be one that will not be mentioned in any other podcast. So we're going to dissect him here. And look, he's not the sexiest of options, but he's just so damn consistent. We're going to keep banging on about this all night, it seems. But 73 average from his 22 games last year and notched up 4 tons. So he kicked 36 goals for the Pies and looks like he's going to be a massive player for them again in 2020. Now, like all key forwards, Hef, and I know you hate key forwards, he has his quiet games, but he did have 9 games of 80 plus, which is great for that F4 to 5 role, and he does have that ability to go big on his day. Now, what I like is he's improving. He's going to be his third year in the system because he was a mature age rookie back in the day. So no one's going to look at him in terms of a fantasy prospect. So I think he's just going to be so far down people's draft orders that you can take him as that late, safe, best 22 option and just stream him if you like, or sit him on the bench and slot him in when you need to, when Collingwood are going to beat up on a side and he's going to take 10 marks and kick 4 goals and play him then. Because when he's up and going, the Pies actually play some really good footy. He's almost a bit of a barometer of that side in their forward line. And I think when he's playing well, he's scoring well, Collingwood are winning, and lots of ticks there. So I think he's just going to be someone that's on no one's radar, and he could get quite late in the draft, and you've got a F4-5 sitting there, happy days, 70 each week. Bob's your uncle.
Yeah, no, I'm starting to turn with like these types of players because he's not like the super tall forward, you know what I mean? Like the lumbering guys that are really slow and can't really move that much as well. Like he can actually rack up or get a few possessions in the forward 50 and actually look pretty dangerous. So I don't mind this sort of type. I was just thinking, Kays, maybe my hatred for key forwards stems from our junior footy days at the Nurippa Tigers when I used to be a key forward. I was like the big centre half forward of the team, and then I just stopped growing and then became a halfback flanker from then on. Maybe that's where my hatred stems from.
Did you not kick enough goals in your prime?
In my prime, I kicked a lot of goals, but my prime just didn't last very long.
Yeah.
I think that's the issue.
Fleeting.
Lasted about 3 years.
Fleeting. What were your AFL fantasy stats been like back in the day?
Oh, would have had some big games, but yeah. Let's
So
get
you're a
stuck in
classic big forward.
well, I guess so, yeah.
You're hating on your own.
I know that maybe that's where it stems from. I'm just jealous that
serious
it just
problems.
didn't happen
You need to
for me.
see someone.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move on to my last player, and the player I'm going to talk about is Braden Sy. So there's been a lot of talk about him, and I might be offering a contrasting view about this guy.
Okay.
And I've just been doing a little bit of digging on his numbers, and I've just noticed something that's a bit scary.
Okay, hit me.
He was pretty disappointing last season. All right, no questions about that. Everyone thought that. Dane Beams affected him early, coming back to the side. Probably pushed him out of the midfield. Then he had a bit of an injury niggle, and just form issues probably kept him out of the side as much as he'd like in 2019.
And his basketball career.
Yeah, that too. But anyway, he played 6 games last year, averaged 50.7. Gross, disgusting for a midfielder, right?
Disgusting.
All right, so let's look back to 2018. Last year in the preseason, everyone was raving about him. This guy's going to be the next big thing. He's going to break out. Yep, and that's us too.
Yep.
And I'm actually dirty on myself for not looking to this a bit more.
Ooh.
So we looked at his averages last year in the preseason. He averaged 75.5 in 2018, but what we didn't do was take into account finals, okay? So after his finals, he only averaged 71. Okay, and if we now look at his last 5 games of 2018, the year that we thought he was all going to break out, his last 5 games he only averaged 65 points a game. That's pretty gross for a midfielder.
Correct.
So if a midfielder is consistently scoring 65, you're not going to be touting him for the next big breakout thing, right?
No.
So maybe we were just expecting too much last year. Maybe the form at the end of 2018 indicated that this was the type of player. So looking at the stats and things like that, he's a fairly contested type player. He doesn't get a lot of that outside ball that the big ball or the big fantasy scorers get from getting that. And he handles a lot more than he kicks as well. Some days he doesn't even, he gets 1 or 2 kicks and he have 8 handles and that sort of thing from his 10 touches that he gets. So that doesn't help his scoring either. So people are asking about Beams being out well and can he come in? He didn't play with Beams at all last season going through his numbers. I think I've got that correct. He didn't play 1 game with Dane Beams last year.
I'd have to believe you.
So yeah, call me out if I got that wrong, but I thought that's what I saw. So I just can't see him doing anything this year. I can't see this year being different. Maybe with like a better preseason, but there was no talk of him being injured last preseason, even though he didn't feature in a lot of the NAB Cup games and things like that. No one really knew what was going on.
Yeah.
It was a bit strange. But yeah, for me, the only way I can see him actually doing anything kind of half decent is if, there's a mass injury in the midfield and he steps up and takes one of those main roles.
Yeah.
Maybe someone like Pendlebury's moves out or, he gets injured or he gets moved to a different position, that like we talked about before.
Yeah.
I don't know, Kaz. What do you think about Sy?
Well, if you look at my best 22, and if you're saying that's gospel, and Dane Beams...
Totally gospel.
Yes, but... Just for the example here. So Dane Beams is the only one of those guys who is probably not going to play round 1, all things considered. I might not know everything about these guys. So it's really going to be between Sy and Wills as to who takes that other spot.
And at the end of the year, it was Wills.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I tend to agree with you a bit in your call, but I do kind of have a bit of forgiveness for, young guys in finals. And finals footy isn't necessarily a highly fantasy friendly game. It's a lot of contested footy. It's a different completely different ball game. So if his numbers dropped off to the final series in 2018, that's not the be all and end all for me. I think you can forgive him for that. What you can't forgive him for is what happened last year, because he came into last season unfit. Then he obviously had his injury issues and his form issues, and we all know what happened there. And Rupert Wills has jumped him. He's really jumped him for that spot. So he's got to get that off him, because I think that's the spot that is potentially up for grabs, because all the other guys in that side have a bit of pace, who are those outside runners, your Josh Thomases, your Hoskin Elliott's, those kind of guys. Chris Mayne has obviously cemented his spot playing smart footy. So I just don't really see whose spot he's taking. You know, if we go back to what their team was in the finals last year, it's really hard to see. So it's a funny one, because it wouldn't surprise me if he just went bananas, if he got his chance and went bananas and really started scoring well.
Yep.
But I just can't see where his his chance is going to come, especially early on in the season, which makes him hard to put a finger on where to draft him.
Yeah, of course. All right, that wraps up Collingwood. And let's move on to your boys, K's, the Essendon Bombers.
Yeah.
See the Bombers way up.
All right, K's, on to your mob, the Essendon Bombers. How's their best 22 looking this season, K's?
It's looking so good that you're going to hear that song on repeat the 26th of September at about 5 p.m. It's grand final day.
Yeah, I get it.
We're gonna lift the cup.
I don't think that's going to
happen. We're not going to do that. But anyway. Right, best 22. Back pocket, Aaron Francis, Cale Hooker, Mason Redman. Halfback flank, Adam Sard, Michael Hurley, Connor McKenna. Centre line, Darcy Parish, Dyson Heppel and Andy McGrath. Half forward line, Orazio Fantasia. Joe Danaher and Devon Smith. Forward line of Anthony McDonald, Tip and Woody playing footy. Sean McKernan at full forward, Jake Stringer in the pocket. Followers, Tom Bell-Chambers, Dylan Schill and Zach Merritt. And on the pine, Marty Gleeson, Matt Guelphy, David Zaharakis and Tommy Cutler.
Yeah, look, I think that looks pretty spot on to me, Kays, actually. I don't really follow your mob like super closely because they're not the greatest team to watch. But
excuse me, we've got the best halfback line in the land.
Yeah, okay.
No, two more exciting halfback flankers than Adam Sard and Connor McKenna.
I just wish they were better fantasy scorers. That's the only thing.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm excited about the return of Devon Smith this year. That will make us a bit more fantasy relevant, I think.
Yeah,
but,
I'm sure our listeners probably picked a few more holes in it than that, but I think
a couple.
That's about
but
about
I've got my reasons. Anyway, on to the first guy, Tommy Cutler. Now, we have had a heap of questions
so
about
many
him.
questions. People asking us for weeks about about Tommy Cutler, so now's the time.
I feel I'm like the Tom Cutler expert of Australia. Like, I could be pulled onto Fox Footy any time and just give a full rundown.
Look, I'm sure a few listeners are now going to tweet in and just challenge you on that, but right now I'm calling it you're the Tom Cutler expert of Australia.
Beautiful. I'm happy to take that mantle. Right, so I'm incredibly excited about Tommy Cutler coming to the Dons, and not just from a fantasy perspective, but from a footy perspective too. So he's only 24, played 3 games last year at the Lions for an average of 80.3. It was his career best year the year before in 2018, which saw him play 18 games for an 84.7 average. There he had 5 tons and a massive 28 touch, 142 point game against Carlton. When fit, he played 8 NEAFL games last year for a 100 average, and that included 3 scores in the 120s. Now, what I've always loved about Cutler is he has an incredibly high ceiling for an outside ball winner especially, and on his day can be an absolute fantasy match winner. So I just think he slots in nicely onto a wing at Essendon. I know I had him on the bench in my best 22, but I think you kind of rotate Parish and McGrath through that wing there. And I just think he provides him a bit more speed, a bit more drive, and he can just get back to that 80 average, no dramas. And I know he's going to be a centre coming into next year, which makes him a bit hard to kind of place in drafts or where he should go. But I think he can genuinely lift it up to a 95, 100. He can play that genuine wing role, which has been so prolific for fantasy scoring since the new kind of 666 rules come in. So I'm excited about him. Essendon have got no fit players. He's going to slot right in there. He's looking completely dreamy, completely fit, and he's going to be ready to fire in 2020.
Well, I don't have to worry about where I'm going to draft him in our league because I'm pretty sure you're keeping this bloke. So
correct.
Tom Cutler stays a chop for 2020.
That he does. Do you have any hot takes on Tom Cutler?
No, but I kind of agree with your assessment in a way. I just don't think he's going to, like, as a midfielder, he's not going to be your top 3, top 4, like, top 2, top 3 midfielders in your side, but he's going to be your perfect mid 4, mid 5.
Yep.
The guy who probably will score around, I reckon, around the mid 80 kind of mark. And one of those guys that you need in your midfield to kind of fill out the spots, and so you're not playing blokes getting 60 and 70. I think he's going to be great for that. So a good, late keeper if you've got him, and then probably a mid early, like not early, but the mid between middle and early. You know what I mean? That kind of spot. I think he's not a bad player to get from there.
Agreed.
Oh, that was easy then.
Yeah.
I'm surprised we're not having some sort of argument over this.
His ceiling is like the best thing about him. Like, he can go so ham compared to anyone else in his kind of.
And I'm glad he actually scored above 100 in the NEAFL as well. Yeah. So that's usually a good sign.
It's a big positive because it's very hard to score well in the NEAFL. So
yeah, exactly. All right, let's move on to my first player. So I'm going to talk about Orazio Fantasia, one of the great stitch-ups of last season. Orazio Fantasia didn't become a Port Adelaide player in the off-season like many people were suggesting, but oh well, I'll still talk about him. Look, Orazio Fantasia, a couple of real poor performances early last season. But then he kind of went on a decent run with a couple of tons involved, kicking a few snags here and there, a few bags of 4, a few bags of 3, that sort of thing. Doing what Orazio does best.
Yep.
So had 104 in round 3 against Melbourne. That was pretty nice. And had 101 versus North Melbourne in round 5 too. So some decent scoring there. But then injuries hit and, interrupted for the rest of the year. So had a bit of trouble there. He averaged 54 for the year. So this is stark contrast to 2018 where he averaged 80. So I personally think the 2018 season was out of the box for him. Kays, what do you think?
I think that's almost his go. I think that 80 is his role.
Yeah,
I think he's like
that's his max for me. That's what I mean, though.
But I think he's an awesome half forward flanker who can run up the ground, get his ball, kicks goals, tackles.
Yeah.
I think he's a great forward option in fantasy. He's never going to be a guy who's going to score you hundreds, week in, week out. But he's going to be, and he's going to have his quiet games too, just the nature of his role. But I think he's a great person to have in your forward line.
Look, in a keeper league, you're obviously going to take players like this.
Yeah.
But I think at the start of last year, there was lots of people just saying he was going to be, one of your forward mainstays going forward from this point on, that sort of stuff. And a guy that you're, for me, like my forward line, we only play 4 forwards, but I like to have all of my forwards averaging at least 80. And so for me, that brings him to probably like an F4 for me, like down that low.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
Look, his fitness was his massive issue last year, so that didn't help anything.
Yeah.
He's not been fit this preseason either, so there's a big warning about Fantasia this year.
Yeah.
So if I had him on my list, purely because of the injury speculation in the preseason, I don't think I'd hold him.
Yeah.
And you hope you can get him early-ish in a draft for keeper league.
Yeah.
I still think there's plenty of value in him. Like I don't think I'm not right. He's not like an Eddie Betts kind of bloke who I know he's a lot older and different, but and almost a different role. But Betts is more of a 60, whereas I think that Fantasia, similar kind of role, is a genuine 80 kind of a player.
Just looking at his average from last year with the 54, he's going to be very undervalued in draft leagues. So he's going to be one of those players that you're going to have to flick through 30 pages to actually get to, and people might forget about him. So that said, you're probably going to be able to get him later than he should go. So he could offer some value there. And I think value pickups are something you always got to think about when you're drafting. Yeah. If you can get guys later in the draft when they probably should have gone earlier, it's always going to be handy for your side.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right, who's your next player, Case?
Connor McKenna. So the Irishman came home like a freight train in 2019. He averaged 90.5 in his last 4 games and had a career PB and first ever ton of 116 against Collingwood in round 23. So that night he had 27 kicks, 8 handballs and 5 marks. So that kick to handball ratio is a thing of beauty. His kicking and running are his massive assets, and that's been a massive reason as to why Essendon actually played some good footy towards the end of last year, was through McKenna and Sard off the half-back line. He was kind of a player I would have avoided in the past, but from what he did late last year, he's really picked up and made me take notice of what he can do. So, as we spoke about earlier with Maynard, the Dons want the ball in McKenna's hands. They want him to run, they want him to kick, they want him to break the lines. And I think that's going to continue in 2020. I think he's the main link man in there.
Yep.
And look, while I probably don't think his 70 average is going to go to an 85 plus kind of thing, I believe he can average that high 70s, especially if he does, take that role on early where they are feeding him the ball. So I think he's going to be a very, very consistent D4, D5. The issue is he's probably going to go a bit high in drafts because of his last 5 average being so high.
Yep.
But if you can sneak him in a position where you get him nicely ranked, I think he's going to be a good recruit for you, because I don't see his numbers being super low like they had been previously. Like he was knocking out a lot of 50s, especially early last year, but towards the end of last year, he was basically minimums, high 60s, 70s, etc. And I think that's just going to grow. As I said, no, he's not going to be a guy who's going to ever get you 85 plus, but I think he's going to be a nice little 75er to potentially low 80s. Yeah,
that's what I was thinking. So looking at his late season averages, so his last 10, his average was 76.8. So that's what I see him averaging for the season as a moment. But
agreed.
This is kind of interesting. You noticed it. We noted his last 5, and that was an 86 average from his last 5. From his last 3, average 91. Yeah. So I don't think he's going that high. So those numbers make him look pretty good there. But look, I think he's going to offer some value, definitely, because we always think defenders and forwards too, to an extent. Well, this year it looks even more so. But anyway, they're scarce. They're hard to find. Yeah. And I think he's going to be one of those players that are going to fill a role for many sides who can manage to get their hands on him.
Agreed.
All right, on to my next player, Kay. So this is, I guess, one of my boys. He's on my side, but he's obviously going to be delisted. And this is Kobe Much. Now, Kobe Much averaged 0 last season. So he actually played and averaged 0.
That's an amazing feat.
Well, he binged a string in the first few minutes of his only game. So that was round 3 versus Melbourne. And I think he did a hamstring, within the first minute and it was the first 3 minutes. And I was super excited because I really enjoyed his VFL numbers from the season prior. So let's just have a look at his VFL numbers for a second. So last year he only averaged 66, but he only played 3 games. So in his third game back after initially doing his hamstring in the AFL, he injured himself again and only scored 19. So the 2 games before that, he had a 91 and 88, bringing him to a 90 average. So if you take out his, injury affected score in the VFL, he averaged 90, really.
Solid.
Right? Yeah, solid. So looking at his 2018 VFL numbers now, I somehow deleted them off my life. Actually, I got a new laptop, that's what happened, and I've lost the 2018 VFL numbers from my computer. Silly me. But I don't know what his average was from there. But I do have a few notes from last year and when we talked about him in the Essendon podcast. So he played 9 games, he had 9 games above 100 in the VFL in 2018. And I know that his top score was 140 in 2018 as well.
That's good going.
Some big fantasy numbers in the VFL there. So, look, too long didn't read, or is it too long didn't listen? I'm not really sure what the acronym is in for this one, but he has scoring potential. For me, he just needs to get on the park. So Essendon with injuries should give him a chance because they wanted to play him really early last season, but the injury kind of just messed him up. Yep. So I think Essendon rate this guy pretty highly. So he's a guy, you're taking a punt on the mid to late stages of the draft. I reckon that's the kind of correct kind of way you want to take a punt on him, but there's so much fantasy potential in this guy. I left my 2017 prospectus at a mate's place after the draft, so I couldn't pull up his junior numbers, but I know that they were good as well. Yep. So, he's one to definitely take a punt on, I think.
With Essendon this year, especially how many injuries they've got at the moment with their side, I think they are one team you can draft a lot of guys just randomly. Yeah. Because they could play and they're going to get opportunities. And he's a great one. Much is a great one. Who's the other guy that's similar to who's in the same draft as Much? Don't know. It doesn't matter. But if you pick out a couple guys,
is it Laverde you're talking about?
Yeah, like Laverde potentially gets a chance if he's fit.
Yeah.
It wasn't Much. It was someone else. But it doesn't matter anyway. But there's I think Essendon are a team you can just go. All right. Well, look. I don't rate him that much, but he's probably going to get an opportunity because Essendon don't have a very strong list at the moment. So keep that in mind when you're drafting. If you're kind of tossing up between a couple guys or you're at the end of the draft and you just can't be bothered, take a chance on someone like Kobe Much because it could pay dividends.
Yeah, I reckon so.
Yeah.
All right, onto a bloke that was picked up in the mid-season draft. Ex-Port Adelaide player, ex-West Adelaide player, now an Essendon player. Who is it, Kays?
William Snelling. So he started his career really well at the Dons last year as that mid-season recruit. He had huge SANFL and VFL numbers last year. So he averaged 102 points in the VFL from 7 games and 128 points in the SANFL from 7 games.
Big numbers.
So, yeah, the only other thing that was big were his tackle numbers. So he averaged 10 tackles a game in the SANFL and 7 a game in the VFL. So they are huge numbers. We love the tacklers. If you're getting 40 points alone from tackling a game, that is absolute gold. At AFL level, he played 3 games, averaged 71.7 there and had a 93-point PB against Port. Now, in the AFL, he was a bit more handball happy than he was in the SANFL, but that's just what happens when you kind of jump up a grade and come play big boy football.
Plus, he was playing probably more forward line stuff as well.
He's playing, not his probably role that he was playing in the lower leagues, but still, I think 71.7 is a great start from your first 3 games at AFL. I think he's very, very close to their best 22. With all the injuries that are happening now, I think he's basically a walk-in start there. And last year he was playing that half-forward flank role, and he just needed that midfield berth, and that's where the numbers are naturally going to come from. Look at it. You look at Heppel, Schill, Zaharakis, and Fantasia to an extent have all been injured this preseason. And I think that makes him a massive chance to get some midfield time early on in the season this year. So he played finals last year, so I think that's an indication that he's probably very close to the best 22, if not in it. And if he can play a good Marsh series and does some damage, I think his stocks are going to rise dramatically. So he's one I'm definitely very keen on. As a forward option, I think there's a lot of value there. Kind of chalk and cheese to what Fantasia does and Snelling does. I think that Snelling has a natural ball-winning game in the fantasy game, whereas Fantasia is a bit more of a quality over quantity kind of player. So if you're tossing up between those two guys, I think I'd be more inclined to push towards Will Snelling because I think there's definitely a spot for him. He's got a more fantasy-friendly game, and as a forward this year in fantasy, I think he's a very, very good option.
I just don't see when Essendon have a fully fit midfield that he still gets to go in there, no matter how he goes early in the season.
I just don't know if they actually will.
If have a fully fit midfield,
yeah,
well, that's the other question. But then I look at it going forward beyond this year. Is he going to be that viable? Is he someone you pick up to purely play this year and maybe not? I don't know, sneak a trade out at the end of the next season. It's hard to tell with a bloke like this.
I think as a forward, you can have a punt on him. Like if he was a mid, you'd probably be a bit gun shy.
He might be mid only if that happens.
Well, that's next year's problem.
Yeah.
You know, but end of the day, he could be a half forward flanker, averages 85, and you've had a fantastic year of it from a young guy. Like they're talking about Jake Stringer playing midfield at Essendon. Like, God, anyone's going to play midfield there this year if that's the case. Like, those guys out the midfield, you've got like other guys who are injured. Like, everyone's injured at Essendon. So, as you said, just have a crack at some of these guys. They could absolutely make your team this year.
I think you're fully aware that Essendon will be in trouble if he's playing full-time midfield. Like, they're going to have a very bad season if that happens.
Yeah, but that's underrating a guy who played some pretty damn good,
No, I'm not saying that. I just don't think... I think if he's one of their mainstay midfielders...
I'm not saying he's going to be there, like, starting on baller, but if he's on the bench rotating through that midfield, you never know what these guys can do.
All right, let's move on. I'm going to talk about a ruckman case. We don't really talk about
at Essendon
very often. Yeah. And this guy goes by the name of Sam Draper. Not Don Draper.
I'm
Sam
interested.
Draper. Oh, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I need a ruckman, so I'm interested too.
Hit me with this take. I want to know this
Right.
take.
So Sam Draper did his ACL in the VFL in round 5 last season. Before this, he was averaging 100 points per game in the VFL. So given Essendon's ruck situation last year, you'd expect he probably would have been given a game at some stage during the year if he would have remained fit.
Definitely.
All right, so in 2018, going back the year before, in the VFL, he was one of Essendon's best players in the VFL. I think he finished in the top 4 of their best and fairest, the top 5 maybe, something like that. So I know it's only VFL, but for a guy who was pretty new to AFL, I think if I'm remembering correctly, and it was only his second season, I guess, in a senior system as a bit of a beanpole, he was going pretty well. So if you look at his hit-out numbers, that was the main thing that stood out to me in 2018. He averaged 40 hit-outs a game in the VFL, and there's some bloody good ruckmen in the VFL. You've got Bruce, you've got Tom Campbell, guys like that just absolutely dominate. And if he's averaging 40, he's up there with some of the best of them. Mark Pitno was also dominating as well.
Sure.
There's some good players in there, and he's still going, matching those numbers as well. So it seems to me like he was ready to go last year if the injury didn't hit. So I'm thinking right now, when everyone's fit and firing at their best, who is the number one ruck at Essendon case? Is Bellchambers still the go-to despite his age and I guess injury concerns there? Or has Andrew Phillips been recruited to kind of just be the stopgap until Draper's ready and then later on the season Draper's going to go? What do you think?
I firmly believe that Bellchambers is the number one ruckman for this year.
Okay.
He's fully fit.
Yep.
They've drafted in Andrew Phillips for cover because Bellchambers is as reliable as a, Chinese watch.
Okay. Is that racist?
I don't know. Those dodgy ones from the market.
Okay.
Not like a proper one from a shop.
Yeah.
Vietnamese watch. I don't care.
All right, move on.
Victorian, I don't know.
There we go.
Market watch. Anyway.
I stumped you now.
I don't mean racist. It's just... Sam Draper, I think, is the future. Essendon was so damn keen to keep him. He's a South Australian boy. I think Port were coming after him pretty heavy, or the Crows are coming after him pretty hard.
Not sure.
Yeah, I think that's the truth.
Yep.
So he's basically, I think they've just covered in Phillips to cover because I don't know if Draper will be ready to go the start of this season because of, coming back from an ACL, you're a big guy. I don't think he's going to be a 2020 proposition as such. I think 2021, because of his injury, he's going to be good to go. I'm quite keen on him as that next chapter ruckman for Essendon.
So you don't think he could be the Tim English of 2020?
No one's that good. But I think if Bellchambers is fit, he's the number one ruckman. Can we see him play later in the year? I think so. Yep. I still don't think he's necessarily up and running at the moment, Sam Draper, properly fit. So I think we're going to know a lot more halfway through the season. But I am quite keen on him as a proposition. I just don't know whether it's 2020.
So 2021 is going to be the next Tim English.
Correct.
All right,
but
put that
Tim
one down.
English will be like Brodie Grundy then.
All right, put that down in your black books, both of those.
Yes.
All right, that wraps it up for Essendon, doesn't it?
Yes.
Cool. And let's move on to the Freo Dockers.
Love it. And
the greatest theme song in the AFL, K's. Not according to many, I don't think. But anyway, Freo
What about
Dockers.
the big sound?
Oh, actually, that's probably the best. I was only joking, by the way. I think many people hate the Freo song.
Freo's sweet.
I think it was like the joke of the competition until like the Gold Coast came in, I reckon.
Yeah.
Although I think West Coast is pretty horrible as well. There was something about the Western Australian teams. I love our Perth listeners though. We have 7-11, they're awesome. But just don't like your team's songs. Anyway, Kays, read out your best 22 for Fremantle.
Rightio, my best 22 from the back line: Luke Ryan, Joel Hamling, Taylor Jaman. Half-back line: Nathan Wilson, Griffin Logue and Adam Chera. Wing of Andy Brayshaw, Reece Conker and James Aish. Half-forward line: Michael Walters, Jesse Hogan, David Mundy. Forward line: Brandon Matera, Matty Taberner and Rory Lobb. Ruck: Sean Darcy with Nat Fife and Connor Blakely. Interchange of Blake Akers, Hayden Young, Darcy Tucker and Stephen Hill.
For mine, I would like to see Caleb Sarong start over Stephen Hill. I thought that'd be kind of cool. And I thought that was kind of the go-to because Stephen Hill, I didn't even know he was even still on the list. So yeah,
He's very old.
Yeah, he's done. The only other thing I'm thinking is maybe just a reshuffle of positions, I guess, like whether James Aish goes to the wing or whether he starts at halfback and Adam Chera might start on a wing, or even Akers on a wing, that sort of thing. And then, looking at your, so Andrew Brayshaw on a wing as well. I thought he would have been more into the midfield, like into the guts next to Nat Fife. So just a few kind of shuffles like that I probably would have thought in a different alternative universe. But anyway, Kaz, it's your best 22 and I'll let you kind of go with it.
Thank you. No, I'm open to all of those changes. I think when you're talking about guys starting off a bench, I don't think that really matters in the AFL anymore. I think like they just play as a second midfielder or something like that. So I think it's just more about trying to get those guys in the 22, and if they fit into a position that's similar to what they played. At the end of the day, you don't even know where guys actually line up anymore. Like people come on and you start on a half forward flank and you end up most of your time in the halfback line. Like it's crazy, but I think it's. If it all goes well, it's not a bad side.
It's just another thing as well. Are they too top heavy with Sean Darcy, Matt Taberner and Rory Lobb? Because you saw it early in the year last year, and I know this was under Ross Lyon, that Sean Darcy, I know he was injured in a bit, but he struggled to get in the side with Rory Lobb kind of playing the main ruck and then Taberner kind of swapping out a bit. And then Taberner got injured and that was kind of, and then Sandy came back. And
Taberner was quite impressive earlier on in the year in terms of his athletic prowess.
Oh, don't spoil him, I'm talking about him.
But then if you go through my emergencies, Cam McCarthy's probably around the mark if he's fit and ready to go. So they've got a lot of tools they can play, but what happens? Like Mundy's slowing down. Like his fantasy numbers are very poor towards the end of last year. Like
he's injured now anyway. So
so it's going to be interesting to see, and I'm very excited about what's his name will do. The new coach.
Who is it? Longmire.
Justin Longmire. I'm excited how it will pan out. So let's have a chat about a few of these players, Hev.
All right, on to your first player case. So let's have a look at Taylor Duman.
Yeah, so he's a little bit of our boy. We talked about him a fair bit last year. Had a solid enough third year in the AFL. So averaged 66 out of that Freo back line. And he kind of came onto our radar last pre-season after his 118-point round 23 game against the Pies. So took a bit of time to get in and amongst it last year. His PB was a 21 touch, 6 mark, 6 tackle game against the Dons. What I like about him, his intercept marking is a real strength. So he picked up 10 marks against Port in round 23. And for me, I think he's a guy who's going to benefit from a new coach and just some general fourth year growth. So I know I'm pretty keen on the third year breakout, but for those kind of halfback flanker, the taller kind of guys or that kind of thing, I think, you can still do some damage in your fourth year.
Are you suggesting players can break out in their fourth year case?
I have just got a small inkling they might be able to.
Okay.
But there's a formula about the third year breakout.
All right. I actually should crush the numbers and see what the go is with that.
Please do.
Actually pull them back to, I can pull them back to the dawn of time, really.
Sweet. Please do. I would love to be proven right and or wrong. Yeah.
I don't know if I want to commit that much amount of time to actually prove you right or wrong. But anyway,
hey,
go on. Let's move on.
When I'm right, it's going to be so worth it.
Let's move on.
He had a 73 and 114 when he played Waffle twice last year. So it does prove he can score, and there he averaged 22 touches and 8 marks. So marking's a serious talent of his, and I think he could be a player that takes that real leap into 2020. So obviously, new coach, not too sure what happens, but I'm pretty excited about what Jaman can do, and I think he has a fair bit of ability. Yeah,
I'm super keen on him as well. I just think he needs to get those shit scores out of his game because the ceiling is going to be quite good. I think if you can actually I guess if you look at a player and you're actually convinced by his ceiling, which I am, and I think you are too, and I think a lot of listeners are too.
Yep.
You've just got to bide your time until he starts to gain that bit more consistency, whether it's a fitness thing, a strength and conditioning type thing. You've just got to wait for these players to come on fully, because I think they generally turn out to be decent fantasy scorers.
Agreed.
All right, let's talk about another one of my boys.
Oh, fuck, I'm actually going to leave. I can't handle any more Andrew Brayshaw talk. Everyone's just talking about Andrew Brayshaw. Like, talk about someone else.
A lot of my boys came through a lot of trading last season as well, actually.
It's not even just like everyone just wants to talk about Andrew Brayshaw.
Well, why wouldn't you? His third year breakout time, mate.
I'm going to be so excited when he's just no good this year. Like, everyone just wants a piece of him.
All right, so my first note here on the show, Doc, is everyone is expecting a breakout.
Everyone. That's not even an understatement. Everyone.
Andrew Brayshaw.
Even Mrs. Brayshaw is expecting a breakout from her son.
Okay, well,
that's actually her boy.
She expects it every year.
Crazy.
Anyway, he's added forward status to his name. So I think that's more, I don't know if everyone's expecting the breakout, but everyone's expecting with the forward status, he's going to be a super handy pickup.
He's a free swing. He's a free swing.
Especially as well on the fantasy classic side of things, he should be a cheaper option.
Yep.
Also in drafts, if you draft your first one, he should go later because of the slide. Yep. And if you own him, you're not going to be throwing him back to the pool because you're going to be taking this chance on him. So I think that's the biggest thing with the forward status. If he was a midfielder, I don't think anyone would give a shit right now, mate. It would not be hyped as much.
There'd still be talk because it's who he is.
Nowhere near as much as what it is right now. Yeah, cool. So third season at AFL level, averaging 70 last season, and just kind of throwing the last late season averages there. So he averaged 80 from his last 5 games. Now in his I guess last year, this season he was playing a lot forward, but he did play a lot more midfield time in those last few rounds as well, which is really good to see. So yeah, after playing forward most of the season, moved back in the midfield, had 2 tons just late in the game, late in the season. So I think he should go all right. More midfield time this year. I think that's going to happen with Mundy out now, as well as the exodus of midfielders. I know they brought Akers in, but there's not really too many others that are going to be replacing him in that midfield. Third year breakout, like we just said. For me, his worst case scenario is he's a 75 average forward next season, which is still serviceable.
Yep.
But I think he'll go 80 plus. I think he might push to the mid 80s. I'm not expecting 100 plus from him. He doesn't seem to me like the type of player that is just about to go nuts like that just yet, but I think he's going to steadily improve, kind of like what his brother did and then went bang. I think he's just going to steadily improve over the next few years, and then he'll probably live up to his pick 2 potential going forward. What do you reckon?
Look, he's probably always going to be a star. I'm just sick of talking about him.
Yeah, fair enough. You get bored talking about players.
He's going to be good. I honestly don't know where he's going to sit in their side. You say that Hill's out and Langdon's out. Does he take a wing? I think he's more likely to take a wing than slot straight into that midfield as such. Yep. That's my gut feel.
Yep.
But, if you're playing wing now, you're basically a midfielder. It doesn't really matter that much.
With the change in the rules, we saw wingers kind of get a bit of a boost last year as well. So
what he scores, I'm not sure. I think if you could get an 85 year out of him, I reckon that's awesome. But I think you're looking at about an 80. I think an 80.
Well, that's going to be good for me. I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
All right, so we're sick of everyone talking about Andrew Brayshaw. So I don't know if this guy is spoken about in the same way. So let's have a talk about Bailey Banfield now. Is everyone talking about Bailey Banfield?
I think I'm the only one talking about Bailey Banfield. I think there's one person talking about him. But I think there's a lot of upside. So
are you the Bailey Banfield expert of Australia?
I actually am as well. As a 2-time owner of Bailey Banfield, I think I know most things about him. So Tom Cutler, Bailey Banfield, probably Ben Keys as well. I should start up my own management company and just talk about, underrated AFL players.
You should just trade all these players in and just have a terrible, terrible year.
I might take Bailey Banfield quite high this year. Anyway, he's not going to retain on my list, I don't think. But I actually think he's been pretty unlucky over the last few years under Big Ross the boss. So he had the 3rd highest average of anyone in the waffle last year. He averaged 114 points per game. And as you remember, Hairflight, when we do our state league wrap-ups, getting over 100 in the waffle is pretty rare.
It's hard to score in the waffle.
Yeah,
no one scores in the waffle.
Yeah, I think there might only be 10 players who averaged over 100 over the waffle. So for him to go at 114 points is really good. These are the kicker points, which I absolutely love. So 8 of his 11 games were 100 pluses, and he had some whopping scores of 140, 155, and 162. So he was averaging 17 kicks, 9 handballs, and 7 tackles a game in the waffle. Now, they are absolutely mouth-watering stats, but what happened was he came from the waffle, went into the AFL and just didn't play the same role. He played a weird little tagging role or a half-forward line. So he came to the AFL, played 7 games, averaged 55 points there, and his PB was in round 1 last year when he had 79 points. And that was the only time he actually notched up 20 touches. So 3rd year in the system, new hope, bit of confidence, new coach, what can happen? For me, I think he's a massive monitor in the preseason because we kind of saw what happened with Darcy Tucker was like no one before last year, and then he kind of got a few games in the JLT last year, did some good tagging roles, ran through the middle when there was no one around, and he actually put a pretty decent score together last year fantasy-wise. I think that Banfield could be someone who just kind of comes from nowhere where no one's expecting it. So monitor him heavily in the preseason, see what's happening. There's a lot of talk about Brett Bewley and that kind of thing potentially taking some time, but I've got to feel that Banfield's a bit above Bewley for me. But I'm keen on him. I want to monitor him. Where you take him, I think you can get him for dirt cheap, so don't go too early. But he's got some fantasy potential.
I get Brett Bewley and Bailey Banfield mixed up because the BB. But anyway.
Bewley's taller. He was the mature age one last year.
Right,
Bailey Banfield's a little kind of nuggety.
No, I did know he was the tagger, so that's kind of how I remember him. But anyway, look, I think if he's best 22, he's definitely one to consider. But that's what you need. If he's stuck in the waffle again like last year, then
it's going to be painful.
Game over. Don't think about it. But I reckon just monitor that one. If he's playing, have a look at him because he has some potential, definitely with those waffle scores.
For sure.
All right, on to my second player of this Fremantle analysis, and that is Matt Taberner. So this is very interesting case, and it actually
You're
stumped me.
talking about a key forward.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy, isn't it?
Wow.
I've changed, man. I've changed.
Apocalypse.
I was on Brady Mycheck. Now I'm on Matt Taberner. I think that was a key forward. I think that was a key forward I was into last week as well. But anyway, this was interesting. So I didn't realize this, but when I was running the breakout tracker, like I'd do a stat scrape and then it kind of works out the top averages for me. It's all scripted and I don't have to, I click one button, it does it all for me.
Beautiful.
Anyway, computer nerd. But anyway, what was really interesting was when I did the forwards, the button I clicked to average the top 10 forwards to me, Matt Taberner, because of the changes to forwards and people missing, 10th, top 10 forward, Matt Taberner.
For this year?
Last year. Top 10, one of the top 10 averages. Wow. So he did have an average of 86 last season. So that probably gets him up there with, Dangerfield going. Who else? Dunkley. There's a heap that left. So Boak, they all jump up. Everyone jumps up. So 86 probably does squeeze you into the top 10. It makes sense. So let's have a look at the season. Let's break it down a bit more. So he had a top score of 128 versus GWS, but then he also had 115 the following week as well. So he Conshoni can actually ton up as well. He averaged 12 kicks per game, so that's 17 disposals per game. So that's a really great,
fantastic,
kick to handball ratio there as well. And he had 8 marks per game too. Gets a few hit outs. For a big man, this is all pretty impressive stuff. But so I'm thinking I might actually have to break my key forward rule.
Yeah.
But my main concern or my main wonder is how does this affect the ruck setup? Last year they very rarely seem to play all three of these guys at once.
Yeah.
But I reckon he's easily their best. I don't know if he's the best key forward. Lob's probably up there as well. But when he's fully
Jesse
fit,
Hogan?
when they're all playing well. But last year, when all four of these guys were playing, when they were all on the same side, I think Taberner
play together.
Yeah, but when Lob, Hogan, and Taberner were playing, he was probably the best of the three. Working the best of three until he got injured. Then
he put some seriously good footy together. Early last year, especially.
If he stays fit, he could actually be anything.
Yeah. Where do you take him? I don't know. I don't know what you do if you're a Taberner owner. Would you keep him? Would you drop a top 10 average forward?
I can't wait to. Who's got him in our league? Is it Joe?
Probably.
Yeah, I'm going to get into him. Just you're not dropping that top 10 forward.
It's a genuine question. I don't know. Would you? Suppose you have to keep him, don't you? Like,
it depends what else he got, obviously.
Yeah.
Look, and if he does go, but that's what the thing. If he does go, like, I don't want to draft him too early just because of the injury kind of scare. He doesn't really string too many seasons together.
I feel the beauty of Fremantle is they never really have a full strength list. Someone's always seems to be injured. Like Lob's either injured or Hogan's either injured or someone, so they never seem to have any of those guys really fit and firing at the same time. So you'd probably keep him on that chance that he, gets his position where he should be and dominates from there.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
I'm not going to draft him early, but like the kind of when it's getting to the mid range, the mid early, what I call it, early mid, whatever you call it, that kind of range. That's where I'm looking at him. But once I've filled out my team and I'm starting to pick bench players or my first reserves, that's when I'm looking at him. I think.
Yeah, because he could really dominate a few games.
Yeah, for sure.
My last player for Fremantle is James Aish. So a guy who's had a bit of an unlucky run with injury and competition over the last few years at Collingwood gets a chance at Fremantle, I think. So he's only played 30 games in 3 seasons, in his last 3 seasons, that is. And he goes to Fremantle where I honestly expect there's a wing spot for him with the departures of Hill and Langdon. So Justin Longmire apparently really loves him from his assistant coach days at
Just going to
Collingwood.
note that you've got ask coach written here.
Yes.
Who's his ask coach? No, I don't know. I was just talking shit.
It's called shorthand, mate. You wouldn't understand. You're not a journalist like me. So he played 13 games last year, average of 67, and had 6 of those at 75 plus. So as a defender, that's pretty good going. For the 3 years prior, he had notched up a ton each year. So he's only 24. It feels like he's been around for ages because obviously he went to Brisbane as a pretty highly touted, I think he was like number 5 draft pick. He played some super footy as an SNFL underage kid, won a flag, I'm pretty sure, for Norwood. Went to Brisbane, hated life, then got traded to Collingwood. I just feel this might be a little coming of age for Aish. So he's got plenty of talent. He just needs a bit of a role that works for him. So looking at a fantasy-wise, I think backs are pretty thin this year, as they always are, and I think he's definitely worth a nice little punt because I genuinely believe that he's got a wing spot sewn up at Fremantle, and if he does, I think he's conducive to some decent scoring, especially as a back.
Yeah, I think like very late he's worth the punt. Like, and I think that's what you were meaning, aren't you?
Middle. Yep.
Shit. No, I wouldn't go that far. Like, just because like we've seen him for year after year after year after year, just done nothing. He's moved the club before, done nothing. He's getting on a bit now. I reckon he's probably even
24,
lucky.
man.
Yeah, I know, but you know what I mean. Like, he's been 6 seasons in AFL.
Yeah, so he's ready to
he'll probably be
6-year breakout.
He'll probably be 25 this year. You know, we'll get there. 6-year breakout. Yeah, we just keep extending that, don't we? The thing is though, like early last year, I think it was, he did look pretty handy.
Yeah.
But he just reverted to type, and I could
Back
just see him
option.
doing that. Yeah, look, no, I'm taking him late. I've had enough. I'd rather just go with someone else throughout this one. So
I'm pretty keen on him. I'm pretty keen on him.
yeah, okay. Well, you know, we'll have to wait and see what happens. But yeah,
He's one you got to monitor in the preseason, I think, because Essendon going to be hard because they've got so many injuries. You don't really know who's in their best 22 right now. And I think Fremantle's lineup will be interesting because new coach, plenty of young blood, and I'm sure they're going to want to blood them. And then all these kind of new guys, even if your Akers, your Aishas, even Conker, only coming in last year, it's going to be interesting to see the makeup of Fremantle's team, I think, early this season. So I'd be looking at James Aish pretty closely, actually.
all right. Well, I'll let you do that, and I'll just skip, and you can take him. So it's all good.
Okay, who are you going to talk about then? Another one of your boys.
Oh no, he's not a boy anymore because I traded him. I traded him for Tom Boyd, funnily enough, because I needed ruck cover in 2 or 3 years ago. But anyway, this is Adam Chera. Would have been 3 years ago, his first year. But anyway, I'm talking about Adam Chera. He only averaged 60 last season, but he played in defence. And for me, he's a natural midfielder, in my opinion. He averaged, so what was I saying? Yeah, averaged 60 last year. Only 1 point up from his average of 2018, which was, 59 or something like that. He's playing more defence was the result of him scoring so poorly. I think he didn't kind of take that leap going into the next season because of this. Looking at his junior numbers, though, so this is where I kind of draw his fantasy prowess that I've always kind of liked, and I think that's what other people look at as well to kind of judge him. And that's, in the NAB League, he averaged 115. So, and at the at the under 18 champs, he scored 82 points per game. Jeez, I'm having struggle with this one. But when we adjust that to the time on ground scores as well, because they are shorter games, this works out to be a 99 point average as well, the under 18 champs, playing against some quality competition. Looking at Supercoach numbers as well, 95 average at the under 18 champs and 137 average in the NAB League. So Supercoach players, just put your binoculars on and make sure you're watching this guy going forward. We'll try to snag him somewhere. Anyway, he's been training with the midfield all pre-season. New coach who should give him a run and be willing to try things. We talked about Langdon and Hill going for every midfielder in Fremantle's side. It's going to improve them. But I think
6 players coming into 2 spots.
Exactly.
Yes.
I reckon he'll see a bump this season. I reckon he actually genuinely will move into the midfield at some stage, and I think we should see him kind of finally progress. I think this last year was a bit of a year where he learned a lot of things about defence and learned a lot of things probably about how he could play his midfield craft as well, learning that, if midfielders don't do their job, this is what happens type thing. So I reckon he learned a bit last season. I reckon he's going to be one of the most improved players for Fremantle this year.
I think he's going to start on halfback line.
Okay.
I think he actually looked pretty good back there. Like, he gives him a lot of class off that halfback
Look,
line.
I agree. It's just from going what the media reports are saying that he's training with the midfield,
everyone
doing all the
trains with
midfield
the
stuff.
midfield group.
Yeah,
like
true.
Drake Stringer's training with the midfield group. Taylor
That's
Walker's training with the
because you
midfield
have no
group.
midfielders. That's because the Crows have they're rubbish. They need to do something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just talking shit.
But like, I just think they're going to give him another year of halfback line. That's my gut feel. I could be 100% wrong, and that's only from a small sample size of games I watched of Freo late last year. But I thought he looked pretty tidy back there, gave him a bit of class, and there's plenty of guys who can kind of run through that half-back line, that wing line, and into that midfield. So wouldn't surprise me if they try a few things, almost do a little bit of a rotation through some games and see who works best in those spots. But there's no doubt about it, he's going to be a star. And if you can get on now, I think you got to do it.
All right, Kaz, is that all the players? We haven't missed anyone like last week?
No, we haven't.
Got to talk about Grant Birchall.
No. I was pretty sure if I had to go back through, but yeah, we're good. We're
All
good.
Right, cool. All right, so let's move on and talk a little bit about the Keeper League membership system we got going on. So just a bit of an update about the breakout tracker. So we've gotten rid of the Excel spreadsheet, the graph that's in there, and we've replaced it with a beautiful JavaScript chart that works in the browser, it works on your mobile phone, and you no longer need to load up Microsoft Excel to use it. So I just want to say a huge thank you to one of our listeners, Adam Stewart. He basically built the whole graph side of things for us, taught me how to use it, taught me how to update it, all that sort of stuff. Absolute legend, one of those blokes who just pops up on Twitter and offers a helping hand. So that's what's great about our listeners as well. So many of our listeners actually give us a hand or point us out things and do things like that.
It is so sexy.
Yeah, it looks so good.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
it looks amazing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, massive thanks, Adam.
So if you haven't got on there yet and you haven't been back to the breakout tracker since it's launched, get back on there and have a play with it because, it looks so much better. It's so much quicker and it looks so good as well. So, yeah, cool. Cheers for that, Adam. Anyway, also as well, we got up for our members under 18 champs and the draftee state leagues numbers. There we've got reserve state league numbers so you can go through and try to track the next big thing, the fringe performers that are going to come in and average 100 this year. So if you're keen on joining up, check the description for all the links in there. There's a link directly to the membership. If you want to sign up, everything we make just goes to support the podcast, goes back into all the various things we need to pay for to get this up and running. We don't pocket any of it or anything like that. So, thank you for that. And, as per usual, we read out a few listeners or a few gold members each week. And so, we'll get stuck into those now. All right. Thank you to Adam Sutton, PJ Sam, Nick Mildenhall, Dan Kovacevic. Oh, God, where were you on that one, Case?
Right here. Waiting.
And Mr. K. So thank you to those. So, we read out 5 every week. If you're keen on joining up, head to the links in the description and, have your name read out in the podcast. All right. Time to get stuck into the listener questions. Moving on to the listener questions. So just before we begin, I guess a bit of a public service announcement or something. But at the moment, because we've had such a huge uptake in listeners over the off season, now which is
awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like it's absolutely awesome. We're actually blown away by how much what's going on at the moment. But anyway, we're just getting so many questions at the moment that we just can't get through them all on the podcast because if we do what we did last week, we're going for upwards of 2 hours. So we just try to pick unique ones at the moment or questions that aren't covered in the team analysis. So if we think we've probably answered your question earlier, we don't mean to be ignoring you. But there was a question I forgot to answer last week, so I actually I've added it in this week to get it going. So this is from at Urendoff. So what's a good way to encourage trading between teams? There's a severe lack of trust between teams in our league. So what's the secret here, Case?
Well, as someone who loves to trade, probably loves to trade too much and then always gets screwed over.
Hell yeah, you do.
Look, I think there's 2 rules you should kind of play by. So 1, don't let people screw other people over. So I think that sometimes there needs to be the commissioner at times take charge and go, no, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
So...
Or just don't be a dick. Like, don't offer the shit trades. Like, don't just try to rip people off. Cause
that's right.
Yeah.
Because then you lose your trust.
Like,
and
there's
then you
guys
lose
in
the
our
trust
league
of
that I just
everyone
don't
else.
bother trying to deal with anymore because it's just like, don't have the time to sift through.
Some have overinflated ideas of their players.
Yeah, and I just don't have time to sift through 50 emails going, like, can I have this guy for this piece of shit? And I'm like, no. Anyway, sorry.
But I think that the main one is don't be mean to people who have been screwed over or don't be mean to people who trade because...
Are you just trying to take some heat off your back here, Cam?
Yes. No. But I feel that, like, I'm happy to be the scapegoat. I'm happy to be screwed over every now and then. But, like, there's just this general stigma in our league where, like, don't trade because you're going to get, teased. Like it seems that no one ever wins in a trade. So people always bring up shit that happened, 5 years ago and you go, well, yeah, but like I think with fantasy and draft and stuff like that, trading is part of the fun thing. Sometimes you get it right. Sometimes you don't get it right. Take the good with the bad.
Yeah, I still think in fantasy football and things like this, like trades only Trades aren't like they are in the AFL, because in the AFL, I guess, like, there's a player that wants to go home, so there's a go home factor, and there's, I guess, some kind of like, you know,
I'd love Josh Dunkley to want to go.
there's sometimes teams are forced into getting screwed over because they, you know, a player only wants to go to this one club, so they have to give up probably, you know, more than they want to or whatever to get to this spot, or, you know, a team loses out. In fantasy football, it's not like that. So basically, the only way a trade gets done if it's a genuine 50-50 most of the time, and it just doesn't seem to happen because everyone wants to win. Everyone wants to take that little, you know, 5-10% more and get it, and no one's willing to do it. So that's why it's actually a really hard thing to do in AFL fantasy. There's no outside, I guess, conditions to the trade. You're actually trying to make your team get better. Now, Keeper League's a bit different because you can pick up a young gun with potential, and you give up an old guy who's going to retire in the next few, and that sort of stuff. So that's the way that's the way I find most of the trades get done. But those trades tend to screw up the league for the season, because, you know, a good team gets 10 old players in the season.
I think a lot of trades get done now or sooner towards your lock-in date for your keepers. So I think that's a good time to really try and be active. But I also think that if you do really want to push it, maybe you have to require that everyone has to make 3 trades.
That's what I was going to say
like
next. You have a quota that you have to meet. You have to make 3 trades. You have to make 5 trades, or you have to make 5 trades throughout the season, or something like that. And everyone has to do it. And if they don't, they lose their first round draft pick the next year or something like that. That sounds harsh. And like, I'm one of those people that doesn't see the obsession in trading. I've kind of built my teams through drafting.
Love trading.
I know. But yeah, it depends. Yes. I like to draft and, you know, bring players up to a draft and identify players. Other people don't do that. They don't do any research. They just rely on screwing people over.
Yes.
As they go. So it depends how you want to play it. But look, I reckon maybe introducing some sort of quota that you have to meet might be good.
Yeah. Next question at AFL Stats, mate. Who is set for the bigger breakout, Florent, Ridley, or Witherden?
Well, you'd assume Witherden's already broken out and he's gone backwards, so it's whether he can get back to his numbers.
Will Witherden re-breakout?
Yeah, well, I don't know about that. Last week, I did think he'd probably get back to at least the 80, but I think a few of the listeners, I think it might have been Brisbane Bears, tweeted in just kind of, I think he's a Brisbane fan, and he's gone through and he's highlighted a number of reasons why he doesn't think Witherden will get back. So get on our Twitter and check that tweet out, but I think he might have fallen out of favour with the coach and a few different roles he was doing as well. So I don't know if that's the case, but look, that's according to the Twitter machine. But anyway, for me, Florent, I reckon, is the biggest breakout candidate for this season. Really, probably isn't best 22, but I think he has potential. But if he does come in, you want him to play midfield. You don't want to rely on that, because I think he generally comes in and plays in defence. So
I agree with that.
Yep. All right.
At Shadow 5, what was McGrath's mid/defender split last year? Was he close to retaining DPP? I'm hoping he'll get it again during position changes. Do you know, Hef?
Look, I don't have the exact figures, but like, you'd assume, I think it's either 30% or 35% that you need to play in a position to lose the status. Like, you need to actually get it. So he obviously played, I guess, under 30% time up there. So I think, or back there. So I think he might battle. Look, I see him as a full-time mid going forward, especially with the injuries at Essendon. I just can't see him going back there. When you've got like your Connor McKenna's, who's going to have a good year. You think Mason Redmond will come back in, and like even someone like Cutler probably is more likely to go to a halfback flank than he is to stand midfield as well.
I think they're fully fit back 6. Even they're not fully fit back 6 is still pretty settled without McGrath in there, I think. So, he's going to be playing a lot more midfield this year.
All right, at Tom Petters asks, rank these in order of preference for Frio's vacant wing spots and likely average. So, Chera, Bewley, Aish, Akers.
So, I think in terms of average, you'd have to go, I think Blake Akers is the highest average out of those guys.
Yeah,
just
I think
as an established older player.
Yep, and I think moving to a new club kind of boosts him nicely as well. Yeah. Should get some midfield time there as well.
Yep. Adam Chera would probably be next for me. I think if he can take that next step, he's going to be the second highest average there. For me, I think James Aish is a walk-up 75er, and I just don't... There's a bit of talk about Brett Bewley, but I just, I'd like to see it before I get too excited about him. It's the classic preseason hype machine with Brett Bewley, I think, at this stage. And wing spots, I think, who's most likely to get one? I honestly think Aish is most likely to get one out of those 4. I think Akers will probably more run through the midfield. I think, as I said, Chero cross half-back, and I just think Bewley will be playing in the 2s.
Aish is a walk-up 75 average despite never averaging 75 before in his career?
Yes.
Okay. Look, I like Akers. I like Akers on a wing. I don't know. So for me, that's the only one. But yeah, I'd have Bewley above Aish, but the rest would be fine. So, Anyway, Let's move on. At Crispy Pigskins asks, if Essendon inject Townsend and Hibbert into the midfield, how will it affect scores for Shield, Merritt and Parrish? As an Essendon supporter, K's, I'll hand this one off to you.
Thank you. Firstly, Crispy Pigskins is a sweet Twitter handle.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I think Townsend would be the one who would go into the midfield. I just don't think Hibbert's going to play, especially with I don't know what happened with his injury that he happened last week, but I think Townsend much more than Hibbert in the midfield. But to be honest, I don't think either of them would really affect those three in particular. I think if Townsend played that inside, grunty mid that they keep talking about him doing, I think that just allows Shield to be a bit more outside, Merritt's outside regardless, and Parrish is probably a wing. Like, he potentially hurts Parrish's CBA attendances, but I don't think it's going to really do too much to Parrish's scoring potential. And really, Shield is a bit unfit at the moment anyway, so I don't think he's going to really affect it. I think he's going to be more in the centre bounce, do some tackling, do some hard stuff apparently, and then leave the other boys to do their thing.
I think they'll be fine. I think they'll be fine. If anything, they'll probably score more just through their natural progression. Maybe not Shield and Merritt, but Parrish I reckon might even go forward. So yeah, from there. All right, at Dingo Boyo asks, Parrish versus McGrath, who is more valuable to the midfield, and do we want them pure inside or getting cheat stats on the outside? I'm towards Parrish for the higher average. Kays, again, as a Bombers fan, your question.
Well, both of them have kind of been disappointments for me thus far, especially fantasy-wise. So I see both of them on the wing in 2020, rotating with Tommy Cutler through there. So if you look at them, they're 22 and 21. They've both only had 4 career tons, and I don't see them ever being inside bulls. So they're going to be the outside kind of players. Parrish runs really well, McGrath runs really well. I think that's their play, their outside ball winners. And I don't think they would have recruited Townsend either if they thought that Parrish and McGrath were going to be these inside big mids. So it's hard to split, in my opinion, about who's going to be better this season. With the injuries with Essendon having this season, it's going to be interesting to see where they kind of line up in the Marsh series. But to me, I could see Parrish and McGrath averaging exactly the same as each other. I think they're almost similar players. They're outside, they damage when they're on there. When they're on, when they're off, they're pretty woeful. But
I think Parrish for me just is I guess with them, I'm just talking about roles and the size stuff like that more so than the averages and stuff. But I think Parrish just becomes more of the valuable fantasy player just for that potential of playing up forward and maintain that.
He's got forward status.
Yeah, exactly. So I know the question was about averages and things like that, but I reckon he's just going to be more of a valuable fantasy scorer than McGrath is. I think.
Yep.
All right. Ben Mortimer asks, Valente a chance this year? ?
Well, he played 7 games, averaging 63 with a couple 80s in the waffle, going through his waffle scores there. He was a really good junior scorer. Injuries just hurt him too much last year. I'm quite keen on him. I think he's a massive talent, both in real footy and fantasy, but I think he needs a clean run at it in the waffle this year. I think looking back at Freo's best 22 or best 26, whatever you want to do this season, I think they're quite settled. They've got quite a good core group. I think he needs to put some runs on the board, play a full season of waffle, and I think he's a real 2021 prospect.
Yeah, real late pickup if you're going to go for him, and hopefully he gets a decent run on the waffle. If he plays like he does, I guess as his junior numbers suggest, he might be in the side later in the year. But I think he, like Kay said, he needs a year to just actually cement himself, play some football, some consistent football, and then we'll think about him for 2021.
Last question at Fox D Greenwood. More midfield time candidates, please. Who you got, Hef?
I was just thinking before off the top of my head. Chase Jones was a midfield time candidate. Adam Cerra was one. Andrew Brayshaw. Dan Houston was in the media in Adelaide that he will be spending a lot more time in the midfield this season. That's all I can think of, Kaz. What about you?
Well, Sam Pelpepper will not be one of those.
Absolutely not.
He's playing forward. Full forward or something.
Fair enough. Whatever.
Yeah. So your team's going well. For me, I think Connor Blakely, he was very hyped last preseason and just played a really weird role last year, bit of halfback.
But he was injured for half the year as well.
Yeah, and I think that he's going to be one who's just going to be slotting straight in that Fremantle midfield and really taking his game to the next level. And my boy Jimmy Rowbottom, I think he's going to find a bit of nice midfield time in the Swans midfield in 2020.
All right. Before we go, we'll just highlight a podcast review. So from Destroyer, 5 stars. Superstar. If you're in a keeper league or dynasty league, then this is a must listen. All the extra content on the website is such a valuable resource. The breakout tracker is a personal favourite. So thanks for that one, Destroyer. And if you could leave us a review, that would be much appreciated, because that's actually our last one that we haven't read out on the show. So if you've got time and you use Apple Podcasts, give us a review, please, pretty please. And we'll read it out on the show and use it to plug those as well. All right, that's a wrap, case. So I guess, follow us on our socials, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok.
I still don't know what TikTok is.
I haven't uploaded a TikTok video in weeks now. I think that one's dead for us. But anyway, that's a wrap for us. So thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week with a few more clubs to talk about. We're up to all the G's, aren't we?
Yes, we're ready to go. Yeah.
All right, Hawthorn's in there, I think, as well, some stage. I don't even know what we're up to.
No.
I'll work out the alphabet
Gold
next
Coast,
week.
Geelong, Greater Western Sydney.
Yeah, good. We're up to the G's.
Well done.
Yep, good. Okay, cool. So, we'll talk to you next week. Make sure you check out the links in the description for all the socials and the membership stuff and the website. Stay tuned to our website, keeperleaguepod.com.au. Lots of articles going up at the moment and various resources that could help you win your league. So, thank you.
Have a good long weekend.
See ya.